Good day, colleagues and ASHEPA members across Africa. Welcome to this special World Safety Day 2026 Roundtable. My name is Hussein Fikri, ASHEPA Executive Committee member and country representative for Egypt, and I am honored to moderate today's session. This year, the ILO theme focuses on psychosocial working environment, a topic that is deeply relevant to African workplaces. Across our continent, workers face pressure related to workload, long hours, unclear rules, limited resources, and challenging socio-economic conditions. The latest ILO Global Report on Psychosocial Working Environment, released this year, highlights why this topic is no longer being treated as secondary. Psychosocial risk factors are now linked to over 840,000 deaths every year, mainly from cardiovascular diseases and mental disorders. They also account for nearly 45 million disability-adjusted life years lost, and an estimated 1.37% of global GDP lost annually due to reduced productivity and illness. These are not just global statistics. They reflect the reality of African workers who face long hours, economic pressure, job insecurity, and organizational strain. The ILO makes it clear psychological risks, hazards are among the most significant occupational risks in the modern world of work. These are no longer just HR issues, they are real safety risks. Today, we bring Africa leaders to explore the realities, risks, and solutions that matter most in our context. I am joined by my colleague, co-host, Mr. Wilson Rooney, President of ASHEPA. Mr. Wilson, welcome.
Thank you very much, Hussein. Thank you. And thank you to all our guests. Thank you very much.
So today we have a great panel. So let me introduce our distinguished guests. Mr. Philemon from the United Kingdom, a senior QHSE manager with 18 plus years across high-risk engineering and infrastructure projects, known for evidence-driven leadership, risk management excellence, and organizational performance. Welcome, Mr. Philemon.
Thank you very much for having me on the roundtable. It's a pleasure to be here.
And Mr. Kalman from South Africa. He's the Southern African representative of ASHEPA and an experienced HSC leader specializing in incident investigation, trend analysis, and organizational learning. Welcome again, Kalman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hussein. Thank you to the viewers and thank you to the team that's participating in this.
Thank you very much. And we have also Mohammed Amin from Morocco, ASHEPA country representative of Morocco, and a senior QHSE leader with 20 plus years in energy, industrial operations, and sustainability leadership. Welcome again, Mohammed, with us.
Thank you, Hussein. I'm happy to be here another time.
We have also on our show Dr. Greggy, occupational health lecturer at Frontier University and senior editor at the Journal of Africa Epidemiology and Public Health Sciences, a published author and a National Safety Award nominee.
Thank you so much.
We have also in our guest Mr. Chesney de Graaf, ASHEPA West Africa representative, architect, CEO, and advocate for safety through design, resilience, and disaster prevention.
Thank you so much, Hussein, Ronnie, and all the team. It's an honor to be part of this conversation.
And we have Dr. Ahmed Nasr, a CEO, CHRO, and HR consultant with 2 decades of experience aligning people's strategy with business performance and driving organizational transformation. Welcome, Dr. Ahmed, with us.
Welcome, Mr. Hussein, and welcome everybody.
Thank you very much. We are honored to have all of you with us today. So we start with our first segment, as we always do, story-driven opening for each guest. To begin, I would like each of the guests to share something personal. Mr. Philemon, what moment in your career made you realize psychosocial hazards are real safety risks?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hussein, for the question. So in 2017, during the Gulf diplomatic crisis, our projects were suddenly hit with severe supply disruptions and cash flow delays. This created months-long salary issues for a subcontractor workforce, and the psychosocial pressure on those workers escalated rapidly. So at the time, I was leading health, safety, and environmental function on the flagship project, and I had to investigate an attempted arson incident on the site after part of the workers' accommodation had already been set on fire days earlier. These workers were overwhelmed by financial stress, austerity, and frustration, pushed them far beyond their breaking point. That experience made it unmistakably clear to me that psychosocial hazards are not abstract concepts. When people are under extreme stress, especially due to factors outside control, the situation can escalate into serious life.
Sure. It's not an easy one. I completely agree with you. Mr. Kalman, can you share a situation where stress or fatigue directly contributed to an unsafe act?
Thank you, Mr. Hussein. I think it was back in 2008 while working at an oil refinery. We had a property damage incident caused by a simple but dangerous mistake. A worker accidentally opened the wrong live instrumentation valve, releasing hot chemicals into the area. And thankfully, nobody was injured. During that investigation, we found that all procedures were correct. You know, your permits, your risk assessments, your PPE, etc., everything. The real cause was psychosocial. The worker was under severe stress after a family dispute he happened to have that same morning. So his focus was completely compromised. That incident showed me clearly that stress can override training, it can override procedures, and even experience. When the mind is not well, safety is at risk.
It's true. When you're not focusing and you have clear mind, you can lose anything. That's true. Mr. Mohammed Amin, your turn. What is one psychosocial challenge you personally faced?
In my first role as a safety manager in the port sector, it was the first mega project of its kind in the country, operating 24/7 with several hundred operators and many of them young and inexperienced, working alongside multiple contractors from different cultures in a very demanding environment. We had huge cargo handling equipment, constant interfaces, and strong commercial pressure, all during the 2009 economic crisis. So my mission was to build a safe system of work while operations were ramping up at high speed. What stayed with me is that the pressure was not only on frontline workers, it was also on leaders. So very early in my career, I learned that when leaders do not manage pressure well, it affects communication, judgment, team climate, and ultimately safety outcomes.
That's true. Also, as leaders, we also face some kind of psychosocial strain or pressure that is always hidden behind us. So I agree 100%. Dr. Ahmed, so how was your own understanding of psychosocial risks evolved over the years?
At the beginning of my career, I saw psychological risk as employee well-being issue. Something nice to have. This is what I think. Today, I see them as core business risks. Stress, unclear rules, and the lack of support don't just affect morale, they directly impact productivity, safety, and the financial performance. The shift for me was realizing that mental pressure translates into operational errors, poor decisions, and even incidents. So, HR is no longer managing people, we are managing human risks, everybody. Thank you.
That's true. Gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your personal thoughts and experience. Now we move to the most important segment, which is the technical deep dive. First point we're going to discuss is understanding psychosocial hazards and Mr. Wilson will handle this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hussein. It's my pleasure to co-host with you. So we will now explore the technical reality across Africa industries to understand how psychosocial hazard affects workers in the continent. I will start with Philemon. How do psychosocial hazards typically show up in your industry?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. So I currently work in the construction sector, which is a fast-paced, high-risky environment. So when we look at the profile of all the workers in that sector, we find common current themes, which include excessive workloads that are assigned to workers to deliver the job. Client-driven pressure, sometimes the timelines provided by the clients are not realistic. That in itself triggers an effect on the workforce and the work breakdown structures assigned to these packages. Loan working, obviously, cannot be overemphasized. Unrealistic deadlines, constant management change, especially for leadership and top management positions, where you lack clarity from management or leadership driving the direction of the project or the operations. The workers tend to undergo a lot of psychosocial risk or stress. Chronic understaffing, allowing workers to take on roles that should be assigned to more people in organizations or departments.
Kevin, what early warning signs do supervisors in general often miss?
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I think relative to Africa, our supervisors don't miss signs because they're careless. They miss them because they look like normal work pressure. African workers are known for being resilient, so the signals appear quietly. And I think the key early signs are present but not focused. Where the guys start making small mistakes. Sometimes you see they have low concentration if you observe them in their working environment. You also come across more near misses, sometimes forgetting procedures or there's poor judgment. There's also irritability, tensions or short temper in the team. You'll find maybe a team of 4 guys. At the beginning of the work project, the guys are getting on well, and then as the stress hits them, they start to be snappy at each other. They start to become more rude or more vulgar. So these small signs usually show up long before an incident.
So which psychosocial hazards are most common in your country? Mohammed?
As Kalmin and Philemon have both highlighted in different ways, psychosocial hazards often grow quietly inside normal work pressure. Here, as in many countries in Africa, the most common ones are workload pressure, unclear roles, weak communication also, limited recognition for staff, and the stress created by economic. So in sectors such as construction, logistics, and maybe industry, we also see the deadline pressure, complex contractor interfaces, and people hesitating to speak openly about stress or fatigue. So for me, the issue is not only how much work people have, it's also how work is organized, shaped, how expectations are communicated, and whether people feel supported or not while doing their job also.
What does a healthy psychosocial working environment look like? Dr. Greji.
Yes, Mr. Wilson, thank you so much for that amazing question. So, a healthy and psychosocial working environment is one where workload are fair. What am I saying? There is autonomy. Expectations are clear among employees, and workers have support. Communication is respectful, whereby there is no breakdown in communication. And then managers are easily approachable. I think in an African culture, we are not seeing that. And then people can speak without fear or favor. I think when you look at in the most workplaces, employees are scared to speak because they're scared of managers. So then that type of environment is not healthy. And then it allows proper rest. In Africa, you find that employees don't rest because they are scared to be fired. And then there is work-life balance. You cannot work for the whole week. So then that environment is not healthy. And that can predispose to a lot of risk in the near future. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson, for that amazing question. Thank you.
Absolutely right. I will move on to Chesri. So tell me, what organizational behavior unintentionally increase psychosocial risk?
Organizational behaviors that unintentionally increases some of the psychological risk are shouting, threats, and bullying. You know, in our culture, we grew up with the leader shouting or yelling or instructing the subordinate with a shout or scream, especially towards the junior staff or the lower grade employees. So this activities or this action significantly increases the psychosocial risk that can create fear and reduce confidence, and then it can damage the overall well-being of the workforce.
When leaders are shouting and subordinates feel confused and they are afraid to voice out. If they have problem, they are not able to say it because they don't know what will come next. So that's absolutely true. So, Dr. Ahmed, how do economic pressure contribute to this psychosocial risk?
We have to confess that economic pressure is one of the biggest hidden drivers of psychological risk in Africa. Organizations push for more output with limited resources, which leads to overload job insecurity and burnout. Employees are constantly operating in survival mode, non-performance mode, and when people feel insecure, they stop speaking up, which increase safety risks. So, the real issue is not pressure itself, but unmanaged pressure, my dear.
Very much, Doc. At this point, we will enter into how psychosocial risk impacts on safety, incidents, and performance. So I will hand over to my co-host, Hussein, to take us through how psychosocial risk impact safety, incidents, and performance. Over to you, Hussein.
Thank you very much, Wilson. Thank you very much. It was very nice hearing the first technical part. So we can start with Mr. Philemon. So, Philemon, how do psychosocial hazards contribute to incidents or unsafe acts?
In as much as organizations put safe systems of work in place, provide a safe working environment, and have a safe systems of work, accidents still happen. Unsafe acts are, still recorded, and that's because psychosocial risk as an element of that sometimes goes unnoticed, and those stressors are not identified earlier, like another of the distinguished speakers said. So, how does this impact into accidents and unsafe acts? Well, when these stressors are not early identified, they tend to impair judgment or reasoning by these workers carrying out the task. Many of them have fatigue-related issues, and that could increase errors in the discharge of their duties day to day, operationally. It also reduces situational and spatial awareness, so they don't understand what the current situation of where they're working are. The spatial awareness, not understanding, the space around where they work. What's required, environmental impacts and aspects. And also it drives at-risk behaviors that are not acceptable from colleagues or workers in the workplace. For instance, taking shortcuts just to get the job done quicker because they're under pressure to deliver. They want to go watch a football game at home, and they've got family issues, and they're thinking about abstract things. So this is also responsible for up to 60% of human factor incidents in high-risk sectors when investigated according to the World Labor Organization data for Africa?
Thank you very much. Definitely, it's a very hidden risk that maybe we are not well aware in the beginning, and it happens. When we investigate, we find it out. So we will go to something more deeper with Mr. Kalman. We want to speak about the stress. How does stress affect decision making in frontline operations?
Thank you, Mr. Hussein. You know, as human beings, I think stress affects everybody, no matter whether you're part of management or no matter whether you're the frontline worker. But stress changes how the frontline worker thinks. It reduces situational awareness and risk perception, which increases the chances of errors and mistakes. And this is how we have the accidents. You know, under pressure, people take shortcuts, and this is not a new thing. This has been happening in a work environment for centuries where people take shortcuts. They skip verification steps or they don't follow procedures properly. I'm sure many of you, when you were safety professionals doing inspections on site, have come across this. You know, so stress also reduces work memory, and workers forget steps or they lose track of critical instructions, you know, like a permit to work. Maybe they don't fill out the risk assessment part, or maybe they don't communicate it properly. You know, even a well-trained worker can make an unsafe decision when the mind is overloaded.
Yeah, thank you. That is very true. When you're overstressed, either from work or, like you mentioned earlier, maybe it's a family issue at home. You are coming with work, and this stress is on your back. When you do the investigation, you find people trained and everything, and then it comes, yes, the hidden part, which is stress. Thank you very much. Mr. Mohammed, we go to another part, which is also important in our psychosocial hazards. What patterns do you see between poor communication
As Philman said, there is a strong relationship between poor communication and safety failures. So poor communication is often a silent contributor to safety failures. In many cases, the problem is not the procedures, absence or presence of procedures. It's the breakdown in how information is shared with people, understood by them and followed by them also. We see recurring patterns such as unclear instructions, weak coordination between teams, assumptions instead of verification of things on the ground, and workers feeling uncomfortable asking questions for rising concerns. So when communication is weak, confusion increases and trust decreases in consequence, and there is far less room for error.
Yes, true. And communication is one of the strongest points for safe workplace. And people to have proper communication across all stakeholders is very, very important. Dr. Greggy, you have mentioned in the previous answer about presentism. So how do psychosocial hazards influence absenteeism and turnover?
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Hossein. Psychosocial hazards like high job demand, low control, and poor support, they directly affect workers' mental health and physical health also. What am I saying? They increase stress, burnout, and sickness and absenteeism. So you find that over time, there will be reduced job satisfaction. Employees will no longer be interested to come for work. Then engagement also will be reduced. So this will lead to high turnover and greater intentions to leave. So you find that most of the employees, they want to leave the organization because of the mode of how employers act. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chesbury. Another part of psychosocial hazard that we face, and we want to know more about it from your side, is unfair treatment and favoritism impact on the safety culture.
Favoritism and unfair treatment is the most poisonous element in the safety culture. circles. Because you see, in the safety environment, when there is psychosocial and cultural stress, people are already going through shortcut. It's a psychological effect. When you go to work and you are doing your safety things, you are checking your things. There is no near misses according to your skill, and it is clear that you are being favored upon. After doing all this work, nobody want to work for somebody to get the favor. At least just a pat at the back, just a recommendation is good. So when it happens like that, then the team that is unfavored would either deliberately set traps for the other person to fall into it, so that you can see a safety officer who is supposed to ensure safety setting trap for his colleague because he's favored, so that they can also see to it that we are all the same. You see, so this one's affects the friends and stuff like that. And you see, the saddest thing is that all our safety policies, all our safety activities, all our safety plans and procedures are signed by the CEO. So when leadership favors some particular set of people, when I see your signature on the policy, I can assure you that I will not follow your instruction. I will say that because you are favoring the other set of people, what then do I do? So favoritism is a no-go area. It's a canker, and it makes our work as safety professionals very, very, very difficult. Thank you.
Yes, favoritism is one of the challenges that we face in our sites, especially when you're trying to implement something and they choose people to implement and people not to implement. Definitely, this poses a big issue. Dr. Ahmed, from the HR point of view, what's the cost of psychosocial hazards to our organizations?
Actually, Mr. Hussein, the cost is much higher than most organizations realize. The normal cases, it shows up in absenteeism, turnover rate, low productivity, and increased turnover. But the biggest hidden cost is poor decision making. When people are stressed, they don't think clearly, and that leads to operational losses. In simple terms, psychological risk is financial leakage, not only like absenteeism or turnover or the HR metrics, normal HR metrics. Thank you.
That's true. We saw this in several of the experiences. One decision can cause a catastrophe in a company, losing financial leakage, like you said, Dr. Ahmed. That's true. Now we go to the most important part, which is the organizational culture and leadership, that will be led by Mr. Wilson. Over to you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you very much, Hussein, and your contribution has been very amazing. So at this moment, I want us to dive down into organizational culture and leadership. So let me start with you, Philemon. So tell us what leadership behavior reduces psychosocial risk.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. I would like to look at it from a strategic, operational, and tactical point of view. From a strategic point of view, as leaders, doesn't matter if you are an industry leader, organizational leader. What matters is that you put measures in place for clear communication. So from a strategic point of view, do you have policies and procedures in place to reduce psychosocial risk? How are these policies, procedures, entwined into your business operations? Are they well organized with your HR department, your crucial advisors there for support? And how are these communications translated from a top-down approach to the guys at the shop floor? Because when you're delivering your daily toolbox talks, your pre-task briefings, your risk assessment reviews, these are the opportunities where mental health, well-being, psychosocial risk need to be communicated. Showing that care to the workers to say, let's talk about these things openly. So many times in my culture and in my sector, I find that these hard conversations, the elephant in the room, is not being addressed. So that's very important from a strategic and operational point of view. And also that the top management who are allocating work breakdown structures or tasks to the workers understand that when they put a lot of work allocation that is not fair or not well planned to these workers, it it also invokes a lot of psychosocial risk and stress to the workers. So there has to be a fair workload allocation. There also needs to be physical support. So in terms of some organizations are way ahead of the curve, and they've started doing a lot of investigations into accidents and discovering that psychosocial risks are a very key component of that. So in terms of visible support, they are now beginning to provide mental health first aiders in the organizations, having employee assistance programs, where the workers who undergo this stress-induced or psychosocial risk can actually have an outlet where they can go to and discuss this well-being, mental health, and psychosocial risk issues, and get solutions, get support, and that's what's expected of leadership. And also, leadership needs to create an environment where psychological safety is built, is trusted. People are open to speak up about issues like this. It's a well-known fact that in construction, about 60 to 70% of the male folk don't even discuss about their mental health or well-being or psychosocial risk. It's looked at as a taboo. But when you create an environment where psychological safety is treated as more important or on the same importance level as procedures and processes, then you begin to have a change in culture. And also early intervention when stress indicators appear. So when you start having environmental stressors, job stressors, organizational stressors appear on your radar, you need to start putting early interventions in place and to make sure that those are the leadership behaviors I expect from top management and also managers in the workplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philemon. So how can supervisors be trained to identify psychosocial hazard? Carmen.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. I think one of the things that is always ignored is communication. So I think let's start with basic communication skills. Many supervisors notice issues, but they struggle to speak with workers effectively, often because of cultural upbringings, which can pose a problem. The second step is clarifying roles and responsibilities. In many African workplaces, supervisors are appointed without fully understanding their duties or their functions. So they assume safety is the HSC team's job. I mean, how many times have you come across supervisors that look at the HSC team and just want to shirk their responsibility onto them? So I think when supervisors know their role and their functions and they can communicate it well, which is very important, then they can spot psychosocial risks much earlier, and I think that will help to reduce risk and accidents in a workplace.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, so that's true. Supervisors play a key, very, very important role in safety implementation because, they say safety is everybody's responsibility. Everyone is responsible for the safety of themselves and the safety of the people they work with. So thank you very much. So, Mohammed, can you tell us how African leaders or leaders in general can build trust in high pressure environment?
Sure. Leaders are expected to build trust. Trust is built when leaders are visible, fair, and consistent, especially in when the pressure is high. So in those moments, people pay less attention to what leaders say and more attention to how they behave and what they do. So when leaders listen, communicate honestly, and create a climate where concerns can be raised without fear, trust grows, sure. So, and in high pressure environments, trust is not a soft issue. It is what allows people to speak up early, work together better, and for sure to stay safe together.
So, to our listeners and our viewers, let me remind you that you are on ASHEPA Roundtable World Safety Day event. I will move on to Dr. Ahmed. Dr. Ahmed, tell us what role does HR play in managing psychosocial risk?
As we know that HR has a lot of responsibility, but one of HR roles is to translate human behavior into business performance. We design structures, we clarify rules, build performance systems, and shape culture. But if HR is doing its job well, psychological risks are reduced by design, not by reaction. So, HR shouldn't be reactive support. It should be strategic architecture of the organization all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doc. So at this moment, we are going to solution, intervention, and good practices. So I will hand over to my co-host, Hussein Fikr, the champion of ASHEPA Roundtable, to take over. Thank you, Hussein. Over to you.
Thank you, Wilson. And jumping now to one of the most important parts is the solutions, interventions, and good practices. We have spoken about how we can see the risks. What are the risks? Now we are expecting from our guests to give us some practical solutions to support ASHEPA members and all professionals in this sector. So, Mr. Philemon, we start with you. What practical actions can organizations take to reduce psychosocial risks?
Right. So I think that the main important detail here is to integrate ISO 45003. This is a first international standard for psychological health and safety at work, which was rolled out in 2021, and it's a detailed guidance on how organizations should manage psychosocial risks such as stress, workload, poor communication, bullying, job insecurity, and organizational culture. It also provides a guideline on how you can implement workload controls, train your supervisors, enforce rest periods, provide confidential reporting. I think if organizations do this, then we are on the right path to success. Thank you.
Thank you, Philemon, for this. The ISO 45000 is a good guideline which can support a lot of people to practically implement or take actions to reduce the psychosocial risks. We move now to Mr. Kalman. From the practical point of view, what low-cost interventions have you seen work well in your experience?
Thank you, Mr. Hussein. I think we can use practical behavior observation training. We can take supervisors into the field, mentor them, teach them to spot the early signs like withdrawal, silence, or repeated mistakes by the frontline worker. And we can also implement a simple behavior-based safety program for everyone, not just the HSE.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yes, BBS is one of the strongest tools where we can simply do it without any cost. Mr. Mohammed, what role does job design play in reducing stress?
Well, I would build on what Dr. Ahmed said about systems, because many psychosocial risks are not just individual issues. They are designed into the way work is structured. That is why job design plays a fundamental role in reducing stress. So when roles are unclear, when workloads are unrealistic, reporting lines are confusing, or people have to control over how they do their work, so stress increases very quickly. So this is why good job design creates clarity, balance, support, and a reasonable level of autonomy also. So if we want to reduce psychosocial strain, we should not only ask people to be more resilient, we must also design work in a more human and sustainable way.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Mr. Chesney, from your experience, since we were speaking later with you about workload and how to make it fair, how can organization practically manage workload more fairly?
Okay, so as Mohammed just concluded, you see, workload management can easily be done by categorization of the tasks, and then you juxtapose them with the requisite experienced people with their skill, the education, and then their communication, and then their management skills.
Thank you, Mr. Chesney. Okay, so we all agree that the main practical point is, first of all, having fair workload, proper communication, proper instructions, clear roles, nothing that is something that we can do on a daily basis. And a simple checkpoint is, like we said, is the behavior-based safety system, where we can teach our people to observe the behavior of the people on the site to find, to try to prevent it. So simple, easy points for our members to learn from. And of course, going to the ISO 45000, that's a new regulation that can support any organization to build a proper psychosocial free environment, like we said. So we go now to a bigger perspective with Mr. Wilson. He's the president. So he's going to take us to the continental perspective with each of our guests. Mr. Wilson, I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Hussein. So let me start with you, Philemon. What unique psychosocial challenge exists in Africa workplace?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I strongly believe that high unemployment pressures, job insecurity, wage arrears, and like our esteemed colleagues have said, unclear roles and responsibility. I have to add that hierarchical cultures and exposure to political or economic instability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philemon. I'll go to Kevin. So how do Africa's socio-economic reality shape psychosocial risk on our continent? Kevin.
Thank you for that. We all know the sad reality and the history of Africa. So in many African countries, financial strain and large extended families creates a constant pressure on the frontline worker. Workers fear losing their income, so they push through fatigue and they follow instructions even when they feel unsafe. High unemployment also reduces psychological safety, so people are afraid to speak up or even report hazards, which we've heard from previous members. Cultural hierarchy can make this worse, so risks stay hidden until something goes wrong.
Thank you very much. So what can African learn from global framework, and what must we do differently, Mohammed? Thank you very much, Hussein.
Yes, Wilson. I think Africa can learn a lot from global frameworks because they provide useful structure, principles, and tested good practices. But we should not copy them blindly. What we need is to adapt them to our realities, such as economic pressure, cultural context, informal work, limited resources, and different levels of organizational maturity. So the real value will come when we translate global principles into practical African solutions that work on the ground and make sense to our people.
That's absolutely true. So that takes us to Dr. Greji. So, Doc, what role should ASHEPA play in advising psychosocial well-being across Africa?
Thank you for that good question, Mr. Wilson. So ASHEPA has a major role to play, not just in Africa, but also the entire globe at large. So what ASHEPA should do, it should develop regional guidelines. What do I mean? For identifying and managing psychosocial hazards across the African region. And also it should strengthen capacity building for all safety practitioners. What do I mean? Occupational safety practitioners. And then also among employers and policymakers. Another thing, ASHEPA can also advocate for integration of psychosocial risk management into the national OHS framework, not only in one country but across Africa. And also ASHEPA should support cross-country research. So ASHEPA should also invest much in research, specifically in Africa, and as time goes on, the globe at large. Thank you so much, Mr. Wilson, for that question.
Thank you very much, Doc. That is very well said. So let me go to Jesri. So tell us, Jesri, so how can African countries collaborate to harmonize the psychosocial standards?
Thank you. I think we can collaborate. As we say, the most important thing is for us to work together. One, we can collaborate in knowledge and in skill. I mean, just as we are doing now, we are collaborating in knowledge and in skill. And then we can collaborate in practical learning. We can be international or inter-nation, inter and intra-Africa study and share of knowledge and skill. And there's somebody who has knowledge in construction. There's somebody who has safety knowledge in oil and gas. But together, we can all be the best that we want Africa to be.
Thank you very much. So I will go to Dr. Ahmed. How can African HSC leaders influence organizational culture at scale? Dr. Ahmed.
Yes, sir. Actually, HR can influence culture through systems, not slogans, policies, performance management, leadership, behavior, and decision rights. These are what shape culture. If you want to change culture at scale, change how the organization operates daily. This is what how to can succeed.
Thank you very much. So at this moment, we will go to general questions for all our guests, and I will hand over to Hussein. So over to you, Hussein.
Thank you very much, Wilson. Thanks, guests. These two general questions, we just want to hear very quick answers. Okay, we have spoken a lot around what are the psychosocial risks that we are having, the signs that we've seen, standards, actions to be taken. So, one leadership behavior we all agree, and this is the most important, is active listening, fairness, and also to eliminate ambiguity. So, if we listen well as a leader, if you are fair as a leader, and if you have proper follow-up with your teams, constant follow-up, and clear roles, definitely will reduce psychosocial risk on our side. We go to Mr. Wilson with the most interesting part of our show, which is the rapid-fire questions. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you very much, Hussein. At this moment, we'll go to our rapid
Go ahead, boss.
Fire round. I will ask each of you one question, and then you give me a quick answer, as short as possible. So, Carmen, tell us one early warning signs leaders ignore.
I think it's sudden silence from engaging workers.
One practice that increases psychosocial risk, Mohammed.
I think a culture of pressure without social dialogue increases psychosocial risk, as ILO Director General indicated a couple days ago in his statement.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. So, Jesri, one message for African HSC and global leaders.
The message is simple. Safety is the way to go. And with safety, as Africans, we can ensure, manage, use our resources for the betterment of our country.
Thank you very much. So, one HR practice that reduce stress, Dr. Ahmed.
We can say again, clear communication of expectations.
So we will take this with us to our various workplaces. At this point, I will hand over to Hussein to close the discussion.
Thank you, Wilson. Thank you, gentlemen. So I would like to thank you all for your insights, honesty, and leadership. Today's discussion definitely made one thing clear. psychosocial risks and hazards are not an abstract concept. They are daily realities that affect safety, performance, and well-being across the world and Africa in special. As we mark World Safety Day for 2026, ASHEPA reaffirms its commitment to supporting African HSE professionals with knowledge, tools, and a strong continental network. I would like to end also with the ILO's 2026 report that reminds us that psychosocial risks are among the fast-growing threats to worker health worldwide. But it also shows that when work is well-designed, well-managed, and fair, it becomes a source of health, dignity, and productivity. Our responsibility as African HSE leaders is to turn this evidence into action, to redesign work in ways that protect people, strengthens organizations, and supports sustainable development across our continent. Wilson, do you have something to say?
Exactly. Thanks to everyone who joined us, and thanks to all our listeners and viewers. Let's continue to raise standards of safety and well-being across Africa. We have the opportunity to lead, not to follow. In building healthier psychosocial working environment, the International Labour Organization called for stronger data, stronger policy, stronger workplace systems. So ASHEPA is committed to championing all these three pillars. Let's take today's insight back to our organizations and turn them into measurable, practical change. Thank you very much. We are happy to be part of this World Safety Day event. Thank you.